We live in interesting times, today's stories. Russian Foreign Minister declares Moscow's support for Maduro. Expelled French jihadists will be arrested on their return to France. Zimbabwean lawyers march for the restoration of rule of law. Attorney General seeks to bar Guaido from leaving Venezuela. The White House's Stone's indictment has nothing to do with the president. U.S. charges Huawei in technology theft and sanctions violations. U.S. intelligence chief says ISIS still has thousands of fighters. 5 Houston police officers are in hospital after being shot. Heavy snow covers roads and slows traffic in the U.S. Midwest. Plus, moviegoers share their insights on the ABC film Guerrero at its Big Apple premiere. Hello everyone, I am Sarah Nackman bringing you stories from around the globe. And this is Eagle News, Washington, D.C. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov declares Moscow's support for President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela amid the ongoing political crisis in that country.
Подчеркну, мы понимаем, что Соединенные Штаты, говоря по-простому, закусили у дела и публично взяли курс на незаконную смену режима. Тем не менее, это не отменяет необходимости отстаивать международное право всеми имеющимися способами. И мы вместе с другими ответственными членами мирового сообщества будем делать все, чтобы поддержать правительство, законное правительство президента Мадуро в отстаивании венесуэльской конституции и тех методов урегулирования кризиса, которые находятся в конституционном поле.
As President Nicolas Maduro's rule hangs in the balance in Venezuela, Russia risks losing its long-cultivated main ally in Latin America and billions invested in oil and arms contracts. Russia's President Vladimir Putin spent years building up an alliance with Venezuela's late populist leader Hugo Chavez and his successor Maduro, often playing host to the two in Moscow. As pressure has built on Maduro from self-proclaimed acting President Juan Guaido and his Western allies, Russia has stood firm behind its man in Caracas. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Tuesday vowed Moscow would, quote, do everything to protect its ally. Behind this support, analysts say, is an understanding that if it loses Venezuela, Moscow will have few allies to speak of in Latin America. Vladimir Rovinsky, a Russian international relations specialist at Columbia's Isesi University, said Venezuela is practically the last thing that Vladimir Putin has left in Latin America. Rovinsky said Moscow likes to present itself as an alternative superpower in Washington's backyard. But while it has close ties with Venezuela and traditional ally communist Cuba, Moscow's relations with Brazil, Ecuador, and Argentina have been hit by recent changes of leadership there. Russia shored up its alliance with Venezuela as the second-largest lender to Caracas after China, supplying it with tanks and Kalashnikovs and investing in the country's main asset, its oil resources. As recently as last month, Maduro announced during a visit to Moscow that Russia would invest $6 billion in Venezuela's oil and mining sectors. Nikolai Petrov, a professor at Moscow's Higher School of Economics, said, now Russia runs the risk that all these long-matured relationships will turn out to be devalued.
In a possible change of policy brought about by the planned withdrawal of U.S. forces, France said Tuesday French jihadists detained in Syria by Kurdish-led forces could be allowed to return home. France is worried that French prisoners held by the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, could be released or escape after U.S. President Donald Trump announced plans last month to pull American forces out of Syria.
The French Foreign Ministry said in a statement, quote, given the development of the military situation in northeast Syria, the American decisions, and to ensure the security of the French, we are examining all options to avoid the escape and scattering of these potentially dangerous individuals. It added, If the forces who are guarding the French fighters took the decision to expel them to France, they would be immediately placed in the hands of the law. Making clear that the jihadists, many of whom enlisted with Islamic State, would face the full weight of the law, the ministry added, "These people voluntarily joined a terrorist organization which is fighting in the Levant, carried out attacks in France, and continues to threaten us." Speaking to BFM News Channel earlier Tuesday, Interior Minister Christopher Castner linked the decision to the U.S. withdrawal. He said, quote, "The Americans are pulling out of Syria. There are currently people in prison in a Kurdish-controlled part of Syria and who are being held because the Americans are there and who will be freed." A French security source speaking on condition of anonymity said 130 people could be repatriated, confirming a figure reported by the BFM News Channel, which said the group included men and women. The French Foreign Ministry said in its statement that it could in no way confirm the figure of 130.
Les forces démocratiques syriennes détiennent ou retiennent actuellement au Rojava des combattants étrangers parmi lesquels il y a des ressortissants français.
Zimbabwean lawyers marched in the capital, Harare, and handed a petition to the Constitutional Court for the restoration of rule of law and respect for human rights in the country.
I think the other worry that people have is that we've almost become a military state, we become a police state where the military is more power than the constitution. We're a constitutional democracy, and what you have seen, although they have not been violent with us, it's an indication of what's been happening in the cover of darkness.
I think it's only because of the sheer scale of the human rights abuses that we have seen that has brought lawyers out today in the numbers that we have seen, and it really speaks to the validity of the grievances that lawyers have and that lawyers have on behalf of their clients.
We said the purpose of the petition is basically to call for the restoration of the rule of law, respect for the Constitution, respect for human rights, and in particular respect for the conduct of trials, which must follow.
Venezuela's Attorney General asked the Supreme Court on Tuesday to bar Juan Guaido, the self-proclaimed acting president and opposition leader, from leaving the country and to freeze his assets.
Hemos llegado acá al TCJ para solicitar que se dicten medidas cautelares que en medio de la investigación que nosotros vamos realizando, ¿verdad?, contra este ciudadano, permitan, en este caso, 1, la prohibición de su salida del país, 2, la prohibición de enajenar y grabar bienes muebles e inmuebles, 3, el bloqueo de sus cuentas. En función de...
Coming up, the White House says Stone's indictment has nothing to do with the president. U.S. charges Huawei in technology theft and sanctions violations. U.S. intelligence chief says ISIS still has thousands of fighters. 5 Houston police officers are in hospital after being shot. Heavy snow covers roads and slows traffic in the U.S. Midwest. Eagle News, Washington, D.C. will be right back.
Eagle News teams are fair.
Sa impeachment complaint laban kay Supreme Court Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno, ang ilang mahistrado.
Ang rekomendasyon na makasuhan ang mga sangkot kasama na ang mga opisyal ng customs.
Hardworking.
Papaunlad ng isang bata na magiging isang future youth leaders.
Dedicated.
Sa nasawi ay dito natagpuan yung bangkay.
Ito yung kanilang paraan ng pag-aalaga ng mga may sakit na leprosy noong unang panahon.
Committed to public service.
Ang chairmanship ng ASEAN sa bansang Singapore.
Marami yung mga biktima ng mga nawawala. Mamambahan ng Bureau of Customs na nasa merkado na yung mga pinaking produkto.
Sa kapila ng mga kilos protesta na nanatiling
dahil
payapa.
Sa mabilis na pagresponde ng mga pamatay sunog, ang apoy mabilis na naapula.
Karoon ng equal opportunity ang ibang mga kababaihan.
Ng mga kabataan at ipinakita sa pamagitan ng kanilang mga likha.
Nanatiling kulang pa rin ang tubig para sa irigasyon, para sa pagtatanim ng ating mga kababayang magsasaka.
As we live in interesting times.
Agila Balita, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 12 ng tanghali hanggang 1:00 ng hapon.
Welcome back. You are watching Eagle News, Washington, D.C. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders says the president is not in danger in the midst of Roger Stone's inculpation, saying, quote, "None of these things have anything to do with the president." In her first briefing of the year, Sanders also reiterates the administration's will to get funding for a border wall.
The president's opened the government on the basis that Democrats have signaled to us that they're willing to actually get serious about a real deal and get serious about fixing the problem at the border, including funding for a border wall. The more that this goes on, the more and more we see that none of these things have anything to do with the president. In Roger Stone's case, the charges of that indictment have literally nothing to do with the president and have to do with his communications with Congress. In fact, I think the further we get into the process, the more and more we see that this has nothing to do with President Trump.
Veteran Republican consultant Roger Stone said Sunday his pre-dawn arrest by U.S. federal agent as part of the Russia collusion probe amounted to Gestapo tactics intended to prejudice a potential jury in his prosecution. Stone was raided at his home in Fort Lauderdale, Florida on Friday, becoming the sixth campaign associate of President Donald Trump indicted in the investigation headed by Special Counsel Robert Mueller into possible collusion with Moscow in the 2016 election. He complained that it was extraordinary for a 29-member SWAT team with numerous cars, amphibious vehicles, and a helicopter to make the arrest, adding that he was forced to look down the barrel of assault weapons as he opened his front door in bare feet. Stone, a renowned political dirty trickster who has consulted with Trump for decades, is charged with lying to the House Intelligence Committee in 2017 about his communications during the campaign with Julian Assange. Assange's WikiLeaks published embarrassing Russian-hacked communications from Democrat Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2016, giving Trump's campaign a boost. Stone is also accused of witness intimidation tactics to sway the testimony before Congress of Verdi host Randy Credico, who was in contact with Assange in 2016. Stone denies all charges and says he has never spoken to Trump about WikiLeaks, Russia, or the Mueller investigation.
The U.S. Justice Department on Monday unveiled sweeping charges against Chinese telecommunications giant Huawei in two cases likely to ratchet up tensions between the two superpowers, including that of a top executive arrested in Canada on a U.S. warrant. The department unveiled 13 charges against Chief Financial Officer Meng Wanzhou, the daughter of the company's founder, who is currently out on bail in Canada, and 3 affiliates related to violating U.S. sanctions on Iran.
Meng's case has sparked a major crisis between Ottawa and Beijing, with Washington in the middle. In addition, 10 U.S. federal charges were filed against 2 Huawei affiliates for stealing robot technology from T-Mobile.
Both sets of charges expose Huawei's brazen and persistent actions to exploit American companies and financial institutions and to threaten the free and fair global marketplace.
Meng, who was arrested in Vancouver on December 1st at Washington's request, is expected to fight extradition to the United States amid heavy pressure on Canada from Beijing, whose subsequent detention of 2 Canadians is seen as an act of retaliation for Meng's arrest. Acting U.S. Attorney General Matthew Whitaker said the extradition request would be sent by a January 30 deadline. A hearing is set for February 6. Whitaker said there was nothing in the indictment that alleged Chinese government involvement in either case.
A grand jury in New York has returned an indictment alleging 13 additional crimes committed by Huawei, its CFO, its affiliate in Iran, and one of its subsidiaries here in the United States. The criminal activity alleged in this indictment goes back at least 10 years and goes all the way to the top of the company. By claiming that Skycom was a separate company and not an affiliate of Huawei, which it actually controlled, Huawei allegedly asserted that all of its Iranian business was in compliance with the American sanctions. These alleged false claims led banks to do business with the company and therefore to unknowingly violate our laws. In an effort to build their own robot, Huawei's engineers allegedly violated confidentiality and non-disclosure agreements with T-Mobile by secretly taking photos of the robot, measuring it, and even stealing a piece of it. We plan to file our formal extradition request and all the necessary documentation under the extradition treaty in the appropriate time frame, which I believe is the 30th, right? Yes, sir. Tomorrow. So we expect to comply with that.
In a hearing at the Senate Intelligence Committee, U.S. Intelligence Chief Dan Quotes says Islamic State group still has thousands of fighters.
While ISIS is nearing territorial defeat in Iraq and Syria, the group has returned to its guerrilla warfare roots while continuing to plot attacks and direct its supporters worldwide. ISIS is intent on resurging and still commands thousands of fighters in Iraq and Syria. Meanwhile, Al-Qaeda is showing signs of confidence as its leaders work to strengthen their networks and encourage attacks against Western interests.
5 police officers in Houston, Texas have been transported to hospital after being shot by a gunman.
That was quite a few, like, and then it stopped, and then again, like really loud, and I knew it was gunshots.
I heard gunshots. I seen an officer on the floor, and then an officer come out the house wounded as well.
The U.S. Midwest dug out from a snowstorm that closed schools and businesses as millions brace for dangerous sub-zero temperatures that could shatter records.
School districts in Minnesota and Washington canceled classes, and government offices, universities, and businesses shuttered, with the mercury expected to drop to a polar minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. National Weather Service said dangerously cold and potentially record-breaking temperatures and wind chills are expected. The Arctic air, together with brisk winds, can lead to dangerously cold wind chill values. In Wisconsin, where nearly a foot of snow was measured in one location, Governor Tony Evers declared a state of emergency, freeing up the Wisconsin National Guard for emergency work if needed. In North and South Dakota, peak wind gusts were measured at 60 to 70 miles per hour. More than 1,000 flights were canceled at 2 airports in Chicago, a major regional hub and America's third largest city in nearby Illinois. On the heels of the storm, nearly a dozen states braced for a blast of Arctic air known as a polar vortex, which was expected to lower temperatures well below normal and far below zero. In Wisconsin's biggest city, Milwaukee, downtown streets were virtually deserted Monday and every major highway in the state covered in ice or snow, according to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. In Minnesota, numerous cities declared snow emergencies, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune reported.
When we come back, moviegoers share their insights on the EBC film Guerrero at its Big Apple premiere. Eagle News, Washington, D.C. will return shortly.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world, events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Agila Balita, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 12 ng tanghali hanggang 1:00 ng hapon.
This is Eagle News, Washington, D.C. I am Sarah Nackman. ABC film Guerrero showings across North America continue. In New York City, moviegoers couldn't get enough of this witty, funny, and inspiring movie. Joy Ann Andres reports.
Souvenir tickets? From internationally acclaimed director Carlo Ortega Cuevas, the movie Guerrero premieres here tonight in New York City. The film first debuted in 2017 in the Philippines and made its way to America in Las Vegas at the end of 2018. Here tonight in New York City, we joined the viewers at a screening to ask who is Guerrero.
The man went through a whole lot of different crises and troubles, if I may, in his life. And for him to be able to pick himself back up, starting from a new routine in life, the film was inspiring.
Mom, 20. 7. 3. 2. 1.
It's very emotional and you can actually connect with some of the moments.
There's some funny parts that like everyone will enjoy.
6.
There's no boring scene from the beginning to the middle to the end of the movie. There's always substance. I had fun watching it.
My favorite part was when like Guerrero and Abby were just talking with each other, just flirting with each other. I don't even know why.
Dito nga yung daan. Dito.
Dito nga.
Eh bakit ba mas marunong ka pa? Eh bahay namin yun.
May daan talaga dito, alam ko.
Oo nga, pero malayo dyan.
Kaya nga.
It was inspiring. It made me tear. I was tearful because of his experience that happened to him.
Kapatid mo ko eh.
Bakit ka iyak ng iyak? Ano ba nakakaiyak?
Hirap lang kasi ng assignment namin, yung mga planeta.
Diba sabi ko sa'yo, tuturuan kita?
Hindi ko alam. Ito yung tinuturo ko sa akin eh.
It's nice. I think a lot of people would like it. I would want my kids to see it. I think they would like it. Oh yeah, I recommend everyone to watch Guerrero. It was very heartwarming and it was spiritual too in a way about life and everything. I mean, it was good.
Come see Guerrero!
Reporting from Regal Cinemas in New York City, I'm your EBC correspondent, Joyette Andres, 1 with 25.
Thank you, Joyanne. Stay tuned to Eagle News for more information about Guerrero showings here in the U.S. and Canada. That is today's Eagle News Washington, D.C. Join us tomorrow for stories that matter to you. Visit our websites at Eaglenews.PH and EagleNewsLive.com. Like us on Facebook. Also follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/EagleNewsPH. On behalf of Eagle News Washington, D.C., thank you for watching. I am Sarah Nackman, and I am 1 with 25.
Ito ang
Eagle Broadcasting Corporation.
June 17, 1967, Eagle Broadcasting Corporation, EBC, was granted a legislative franchise to establish, maintain, and operate radio broadcasting and television stations in the Philippines. April 26, 1968, EBC began its humble operations with radio station DZEC 1062, featuring musical,